All right, on that note, it's time for our next panel discussion. And before we also do that, once again, we'd like to inform you that we've had the advisory board members that was also chaired by Amarendu Prakash sir. And this is where the visionaries and the editorial team came together to curate the agenda. But at this junction of time, I'd also like to thank our advisory board members for coming on stage, for also helping us share our gratitude to all the speakers that have come for today's summit. So that's a big thank you to our advisory board. And with that, we'll bring your attention back because it's time for the next panel discussion. And this is where we're talking about some more strategies, again, compliances and policy impact with regard to the regulatory harmonies in logistics. These fireside chats, ladies and gentlemen, is a way for us to explore the complexities of logistics regulations, also understand all the kind of strategies for compliance and policy impacts through this particular session. So let's get to gain some insights into challenges that are generally posed by all the diverse regulations that are seen, but at the same time, let's learn from the best practices for alignment and also for maximizing efficiency. This particular discussion will actually cover technology, collaboration, proactive engagement for sustainable growth. I think that's kind of heavyweight of a topic there, but that's fine because we have heavyweight of leaders joining in a short while. So on that note, let me get a quick thumbs up from the team. Our team is very particular about aesthetics, just like our photographers. We'll get the angles right, we'll get the conversations right, we'll get the focus right. Superb. Looks like we're set? Yes, we are. With that, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, first up, let me please invite our session moderator. May I please invite Vishal Nanavati, partner, Waterhouse & Co. LLP, to please come on stage. Thank you, Vishal, for joining us. And on that note, let me go ahead and invite your speakers on stage. We have with us Somnath Das, Senior Vice President, Head Supply Chain and Manufacturing, Jubilant FoodWorks. May I also please invite Dr. Venkatesan N, Director and Chief Procurement Officer, Max Healthcare Group. May I please invite Abhishek Aditya, Director, SCM, McCain Foods. Dr. Ravi Prakash Mathur, Vice President, Supply Chain Management and Head of Global Logistics, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. Mr. Vikas Goyal, Head Supply Chain Management, Fortis Healthcare. And Mr. Deepak Sharma, Head Manufacturing, Supply Chain and Logistics, Bajaj Electricals. Some of the most vibrant brands out there, some of the most vibrant leaders over here. Can we have a vibrant round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? I know this is one session that we are eagerly looking forward to. Look at the diversity in the topics that are about to get covered and the kind of leaders that are joining in with that. Without any further delay, I'm going to quickly hand it over to Mr. Vishal Nanavati. Over to you then.
All right, thank you. So thank you, everyone. We'll straight away jump into the session because we've just got 30 minutes and 6 rich contributors on my panel today. But let me just start with a quote, okay? Our topic is to do with, the regulations around the logistics, right? So there's an ex-president of US, Dwight D. He quoted that, you will never find it difficult to prove that battles, campaigns, and wars have either been won or lost because of primarily the reason is logistics, right? So logistics is such an important sector. Contributor, to the growth of the economy. With that, let's get into the regulations and let me get started with my, first speaker, Deepak. If I may bring you here, logistics, as we know, it's a sector which is worth $300 billion today, a CAGR of 12 to 14%, steady growth expected by 27 to reach somewhere close to $400 billion. But when we dive deep into the regulations, of logistics, Deepak, maybe your insights in terms of how have you experienced, from Bajaj Electrical standpoint, the evolution of, the regulatory landscape, the impact on your business, and maybe if you could also shed some light on the NLP, the National Logistics Policy.
Yeah, thanks, Vishal. Happy National Logistics Day to all of us, basically. Today is a National Logistics Day. What's a logistics? Is a logistics world, if you'll see, it's a complex matrix of mostly cost, speed, efficiency, and regulatory compliances. So these are the key parameters and all. if you'll see the evaluation, basically landscape of logistics in India, will not go globally and all. So it started somewhere in 2017 with the GST, and exactly on these parameters, basically. So the first innovation or initiative or the shift happened with the GST coming in. There was a lot of complex taxation, different state, different taxations. Logistics was having challenges moving goods from one state to other state and all. And then we were, you all know, like those days, warehouses. We were forced to set up warehouses in every places and all. So by bringing the GST, government eliminated all those issues. There was a simplified GST came into the picture. That simplified the logistics movement, the taxation, compliance and all. And if that's warehouses that was supposed to be in each places, in each city and each location, we were able to consolidate the warehouses. And there is a data, if you'll see, Crisil presented one data that India saved close to 1.5 to 2% kind of logistics cost with GST during those days after implementation. Once GST was there, taxation, everything is simplified. Now you have to move with some documentation, simplified version of documentation, so that you can move from one state to other state. And that's the need of e-way bill. So exactly, so where first was, there's a maximum cost. Here the speed was important, second parameter. And the e-way bill helped logistics team to move the goods from one state to other state because of online documentation. No checkpoints, nobody will stop you. You can move, compliances will be there and all. And World Bank published some data that after implementing e-way bill, there's a 20% speed increased in India in logistics world. So you have taxation simplification, you have online documentation, but how global will see you as a country, that's a simplification within India. Then there's a need arises for a national logistics policy. Even somebody else from outside would like to see how to work in India. That's the policy, right? And then came the national logistics policy. First, I told you there's a parameter cost, speed, regulations, and efficiency. Now, people are looking for visibility, technology. These were the important parameters, reliability. And then government come up with national logistics policy. How to work, setting up the SOPs, unified infrastructure, platform for integrated platform, digital platform, and they combined all the other transport ministry, like we have railway, we have road, we have air and all, to put all into one national logistics policy with the ULIP and all. So the aim for this, bringing this national logistics policy was to reduce GDP, the logistics cost to GDP, from somewhere 14% to 9%, and we are doing very well in that. While these regulations were coming into the picture in India, there's the importance of infrastructures in rail, road, and your sea and all. So they put Bharatmala project, you have seen, Sagarmala for ports, Bharatmala to have road connectivity and all. I think 85,000 kilometers road network is set up in with this project. In Sagarmala, I think 6 new ports are coming up. And if you'll see rail corridor, direct rail corridors, there's a close to, I think, road is 85,000 and this rail is 8,600 kilometers set up so that your goods in railways can move directly without the hindrance of or delays, because railway was the very efficient and cheap mode, but actually nobody was coming as an industry. I worked in many companies, I was reluctant to give it to railways because there was very much delay. There was no direct train to one place to other place. With this direct corridor, this helped us a lot. So if you'll see the complete evaluation, and actually if you'll see in India, that's the biggest evaluation in logistics. And generally logistics people say that is a thankless job. But if you'll see, government has put maximum energy, initiatives, money, and policies in logistics. Thank you.
No, thanks, Deepak. And I agree with you. As far as the intent of NLP goes, they say government has stated, their visionary document that it's more tech-enabled, integrated, cost-efficient, resilient, a trust-based ecosystem. And you also mentioned about the GDP. That's quite interesting because today as a country, we are spending roughly 14 to 15% of the logistics cost, percentage to the GDP. And Deepak mentioned about, halving that, somewhere close to 8% because that's the benchmark which the developed economies are spending on the GDP. But it's still a run for us. Let me bring Venkat here, moving from electrical space to healthcare space. Venkat, again, your perspective in terms of, healthcare is a very different ecosystem when it comes to logistics, right? What are your pressing challenges as a supply chain head in your company? And how do you see this evolving regulatory landscape having an impact on healthcare?
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank ET Now for this opportunity. Before going into the logistics topic, I take 2 minutes to brief about the healthcare. Healthcare industry is a huge industry. Like by 2022, we had achieved $370 billion and expected to be in 2026 by $610 billion. It's a huge industry. One more thing I would like to add here is the medical tourism. We are one of the top 10 countries in the world for medical tourism. We are getting 7 million people every year for the medical treatment from 76 different countries. So these are the success of healthcare. For the logistics point of view, especially we are from the hospital background, so we deal with 3 domains. We purchase the drugs and consumables, and also we import the equipments where we deal in the logistics point of view. So pharma, basically, most of the cost goes to the transportation and warehousing because it's a dedicated, very sensitive drugs which needs to be handled, the cold storage and the handling part takes major cost. Also the medical devices, which we don't have in-house manufacturing like needles, syringes and other consumables. Also the medical equipment, we don't have in India for MRI, LINAC, PET CT, and most of the cath lab high-end equipments. We actually import from many other countries. The difficulties what we are facing right now is government has introduced a CDSO license for importing this medical equipment, which is taking more time to get this license from the government offices, and it takes more time and delays the patient treatment. That is one issue. Another one, we are facing a challenge is, the drugs, shortages of drugs. Because the government has introduced, with a good intention for the price control order, which is called the DPCO, 2013 Act, they include many drugs into the DPCO order. That drugs cost is or price is freezed by the government, but the raw material cost and the transportation logistic cost has increased double-digit post-COVID. But last year and last to last year, government has given the price increase based on the WPI index. WPI index, that last year 0.05%, last to last year 0.03%, which was very low. Because of that, the manufacturing companies has reduced their manufacturing because of it's a loss-making product. This is very basic oncology drugs, which is very essential for the patient treatment. They should not be affected for the patient treatment. I think at least government should intervene in these kind of areas where patient treatment can be better. And there are challenges in the research and development. Government can focus on research and development. For the past 2 years, they're putting, investing money in the research and development. They're putting money to AIIMS and Tata hospitals and all for the research and developments. So most of the innovative drugs we are importing from abroad, US, mainly from US. So the oncology itself, most of the oncology drugs, 60% of the oncology drugs we are importing from US because we don't have that kind of research and innovation. We don't have the quality drugs which we can treat the patients, which is called immunotherapy. Immunotherapy in 2021, it was 10% of total oncology business. Now it is 60% of total oncology business. So we should invest in our research and development and create those kind of drugs for our patient benefit, and they can get the advantage of cost-effective treatment. Thank you.
Thanks, Venkat. Venkat, you mentioned about DPCO, and I think so that brings a good segue for moving from healthcare to pharmaceutical. Dr. Ravi, let me bring you here. Now, when it comes to regulations in pharma, now pharma sector itself is highly regulated sector. You have to comply with tons of regulations, to ensure that, absolutely all the governance standards are met. But we're talking about logistics today, and there are a separate set of regulations on logistics that you have to deal with. My rough research suggested that there are some 20 government agencies that you deal on logistics side. There are roughly 40 partner government agencies. There are roughly 37 plus export promotion councils. And when it comes to export-import type of documents, there are 500 types of documents that one has to comply with. Now, from your pharmaceutical background and the industry experience that you have, Dr. Ravi, if you could share with us, how do you strategize ensuring compliances with not only your set of sector-specific regulations, but also the heavy core logistics regulations?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that great question. And, as you rightly said, as far as pharma is concerned, compliance is everything, and especially in logistics also, compliance is everything. Now, I'd like to kind of break this question of yours into two aspects. One is that what you anyway have to comply, because compliance is hygiene. I mean, there is no, you can't be in business if you're non-compliant. And the guidelines as far as pharma is concerned are very clear. I mean, regardless of the agencies that we are dealing with. For example, in the manufacturing side, you have good manufacturing practices as a guideline, which are governed by WHO. When you extrapolate that to distribution, there are good distribution practices. So whatever you're doing in terms of distribution, whether it is warehousing, transportation, they have to kind of fall into that compliance framework. And like I said, this is your ticket to play. There is no business if you're not compliant. What I also like, kind of highlight to the panel over here is, and to your question of what is your strategy for dealing with compliance is, that you not only have to just qualify, you also have to expand the discussion. You have to expand the envelope. And that is where a lot of voluntary action comes into play. I'll give you just a couple of examples, which may be not mandatory for you to comply and to play, but where by participating, you're expanding the discussion, you're creating new conversations. And a couple of examples. For example, there is a forum, there is a certification which is called AEO. That is an Authorized Economic Operator. Now, there are multiple tiers to that AEO certification, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. As you become more and more compliant and are able to demonstrate through your processes and your documentation, then you go up that certification tier. Now, this AEO certification is not an India-specific certification. This is something which is governed by the international customs. The customs across countries, they collaborate with each other, through international agencies. And when that program is implemented in India through the Indian customs authorities, they also do this certification. So just to highlight, out of all the companies, and you can take a guess how many companies are into export and import in India, out of all of them, only 124 are compliant to T3. Out of which around 20 of them are, in that, around only two are there which are in the pharma and chemical space. So Dr. Reddy's is one of them. So this is something that is, nobody is compelling you to do it, but you are creating familiarity with the agencies. Now, it is not just a tick in the box. There are monetizable benefits that comes out of being a Tier 3 compliant player in the regulatory framework. And faster lead times, faster turnaround times, benefits in terms of, the various customs benefits you get. So that's a clear strategy, which is good from a compliance perspective. Also, you can also monetize it. Similarly, there is, if you're exporting to the US, there is CTPAT. I'm sure a lot of people would have heard of Customs and Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. So if you are, of course, now it has become mandatory, but we were the early players to be CTPAT compliant, and that gets at a green channel when you are exporting to the US, as far from a security perspective is concerned. I'll just cite one more example. There is a new initiative which is led by the US, which is called IPEF. So Indo-Pacific Framework for Economic Cooperation for Prosperity. Now, of course, there is no certification involved to it, but when you participate in forums like this, you give your inputs, what can be done to increase cooperation between member countries. So the strategy is, number one, comply to all the regulatory frameworks, whether it's a national level, CDC, SDO, or a state level, but the state drug control authority, and then expand the discussions and lead actually in being a compliant player. So that's what our strategy is.
Got it. So I think what I gather from you is more like a partnering with the government on a regular basis is what helps you, to kind of their
Exactly. We are there in many, many forums. I just gave you 3 examples.
Absolutely. I think so. The interesting part you mentioned, of course, we're talking about the compliances, and compliances are never going to be easy for any businesses, right? We've got electricals, we've got healthcare, we've got foods, we've got pharmaceutical on this stage itself. Now, the National Logistics Policy also talks about, the ULIP as a platform. And Somnath, let me bring you here. And you can, Somnath, maybe if you can help the audience with what this ULIP as an acronym stands for, or what is the intent of the National Logistics Policy towards ULIP? Are you, from your Jubilant company perspective, have started taking the benefits of ULIP, or maybe what are the use cases? But just before that, I think so when it comes to compliances, the intent is also that, and maybe through ULIP, is to ensure that, the interministerial database, it's all about democratization of the data, freely available to businesses like you. And if you make the best use of it, I'm sure the businesses do benefit. But personally, I haven't seen much of the use case, but over to you, Somnath, on that.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thanks to ET now for this opportunity. I'll take a step back and probably, go back in 2021 when PM Gati Shakti was launched in October 2021. And a natural progression or succession to that was launch of the NLP, the National Logistics Policy in September 2022. And while Gati Shakti was largely about building the fixed infrastructure, network planning, facilitating multimodal, etc., National Logistics Policy was more towards building a soft network and overall improvement of the logistics, sector in the country. So when I talk about the soft network, it talks about, multiple areas and action areas. So under the NLP, there is a, CLAP, which is a comprehensive logistic action plan, and there are approximately eight key action areas. First of it is the integrated digital system for connecting the data across the logistics. Then you have asset standardization and service standardization. You have human resources, you have EXIM. So 8 of them are there. And each of these are a very critical part of the NLP, and there are action plans for each of them. The first one of them is the integrated platform from logistics systems, and which is where the idea of ULIP has come from. So ULIP is a unified logistic interface platform, which I believe is a revolutionary thing that has happened to the logistics industry and to many organizations. So ULIP provides a platform for organizations in the logistics sector. And by that, I do not mean the users. I do not mean only the providers or service providers, but also the entire ecosystem, starting from banks to CLF and so on and so forth. So it provides a platform for the entire ecosystem of logistics to access data across 10 ministries, across 37 systems of these 10 ministries, across 1,800 data sets, and around 900 companies only are having access to that right now. So what it does is, it gives you information about, about logistics related to ministries like Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Railways, Ministry of Ports and Seaways, and so on. And all these data, which is available across 37 systems, are accessible through one unified platform of ULIP. And some of the known organizations who have adopted it, have participated it, which are publicly available, are companies like, you have these users like Maruti Suzuki, you have Tata Steel, Jindal Stainless, and so on. On the other hand, you have organizations like TCIL, Shiprocket, Safe Express, and so on. And you also have people like Yes Banks. So it is the entire ecosystem which is benefiting out of this ULIP, because it gives a one unified portal for people to access data across logistics. And what it does is, kind of bringing a transparency from scattered data, because all of us, we know that logistics is fairly fragmented here in India. Data is present but not available. If it is available, it is not consolidated. And what ULIP does is brings about this whole transparency by gathering all these scattered data into one consolidated platform. Multiple use cases are there, if I may say. For example, if we take a large cement manufacturer, Ultratech, in any day they would have more than 10,000 trucks flying across the country. And a lot of that gets onboarded across the day, hundreds of them get onboarded and so on and so forth. One fantastic use case is about using ULIP as a platform to access data like APIs like FASTag, APIs like Vahan, APIs like a lot of these APIs, FOIS and so on, to get a real-time visibility of where are the vehicles are. It gives you I think there was a use case of 90% reduction in onboarding time of new vehicles and checking of statutory compliances of vehicles through this platform. I think it is an idea which is revolutionary. As I said, it is only 900 organizations who have kind of right now as we speak are enrolled in this, but I think it provides a platform, a huge amount of data mining opportunity for organizations.
Thanks, Somnath. I remember one more use case, and you mentioned is about the businesses, utilizing the benefits of ULIP. But I was going through a video of Dr. Vaishnav, and, he said that, today if, let's say, he was talking about a highway somewhere near Ambaji Abu, and he said that if that highway had to be constructed earlier, only one ministry will kind of look into it, and then later on several ministries will kick in. But now what happens with this PM Gati Shakti, the national plan, they would think about that, okay, if this logistics is an issue, to build that, you go to the infrastructure. So you start looking about constructing a highway and connecting this. It has an impact on the tourism, so you bring the tourism ministry in it. You have a power grid line running across, so you will bring the power ministry in it. You have an environmental pollution, related issues, you will bring that ministry to seek all sorts of approvals. And finally, if it cuts across some sort of wildlife, then you will bring that part also, the forestry and all. So I think so that's the benefit that we see. That's the beauty of this. It's a step in the right direction. Let me bring Vikas to you over here. I was just continuing with the discussion on NLP, right? NLP also, as business, you are the user, right, on this side, and government really expects that the more and more use cases are coming out, they will think through more of improvising that. They have constituted something like a service improvement group, SIG, if I remember. Have you made use of it? It's more like customer facing, and anything which is customer facing regulatory landscape, the expectations are never going to be 100% met. So, because your inputs and with your industry experience on that.
Yeah, sure. So good evening, my friends. So myself, Vikas from Fortis Hospital. So if we see the word, we heard the word logistics. So that comes brown boxes, corrugated boxes, and the containers and the trolleys which are moving from in highways and on roads over there. So logistics means the boxes, movement of boxes. But if we see in a healthcare, so this is not only, there's much more, because healthcare is a service industry. So first and foremost, logistics system which we require for the hospital is a patient movement. So all the patients who are coming to the hospital, they require a safe and secure movement, which is a time bound, so that they can reach us to the hospitals. And there is a golden hours policy in the hospitals. Within first 15 minutes, first 60 minutes, first 90 minutes, they reach us to the hospital. So first and foremost requirement for the logistics is the patient movement for the hospitals. Second, the movement of the healthcare providers. If they are secure, time bound, and they can reach us to the hospitals to provide the services, that is the second logistic requirement for the hospitals. Third, hospitals require a lot of materials. They are not manufacturing. They are getting the manufactured materials by the manufacturers, but they required on time. They're maintaining the inventory, but hospitals are 24/7 and 365. So they require the medical support, non-medical support, items, equipments, 24/7. So their logistics support is also required, which is 365 days for the hospitals. Third, hospitals is generating a lot of biomedical waste also. That is also has to be safely, securely from the hospital to the waste disposal center that has to be transported back. So these are the three important areas where we are using the logistics in our country. And if we see, there is my friend says we have one of the good country for getting a lot of foreign tourism also. The hospitals, and if we see the demography of the hospitals, certain areas have a very good and very high number of hospitals. Tier B and Tier C have a less number of hospitals, but now they are also growing over there. So movement of people within the state, out of the state, regional level, and the global level. There is a huge movement of patients, their attendants from one hospital to another hospitals, one city to another hospitals. So we required a logistics support for that part also. Third, we required, if we see in a logistics, so three things are moving parallelly. So we require the infrastructure, processes, and third is compliances over there. So infrastructures, we require a lot of roads, transport, air, rail, cargo, shipment, etc. So that has to be well connected, and we required a first mile and last mile connectivity also over there. In processes, we required a digitization, clearance from the government agencies, legal part, compliances, that has to be digitalization, single window approvals over there, so that it becomes fast for us to get all the approvals, requisite approvals in place, and get all the items on board on a priority basis. Third is compliances. For compliances, if we see in the compliances, so there are 4 steps in the compliances. One is a confirmation, second is a certification, third is attestation, and fourth is verification. So CCAV, that has to be single window. It's to be on a priority basis for the healthcare people, for the healthcare providers, and all the clearance has to be provided at the least possible basis. Now we come on a national logistics policies over there. So whatever the policies we have, now we are improving a lot. Digitalization work is done by the government a lot. We are getting a lot of support also for the early priority basis for clearance for our all material which we are importing or getting from the other states over there. We are getting a very good support from the government also during the COVID period for getting the priority supplies for the hospitals. So whatever the policies we are making in future which we are generating, that has to be based on a SMART goal that is specific, measurable, realistic, achievable, and time-bound.
Thanks, Vikas. We have the bell come up, but my apologies, Abhishek. I have yet not brought you in, but let me bring you in. The last question for the day for this panel, more specific to you from the foods industry perspective. Abhishek, now we've heard a lot, in terms of the policy in the right direction and all, and the policies will keep coming in, the regulations will keep coming in. But there's also an element of proactive adaptation to the policy. What are your strategies from your industry perspective? How do you proactively react or adapt yourself to the coming policies?
Thank you. First of all, good evening. We didn't take much of the time. It's displaying that the time's up. So I'm Abhishek. I lead the supply chain for McCain, which is into frozen snacks. So for us, it's not only about moving brown boxes, it's about moving brown boxes in a regulatory mode, that too at -18 across, right, from the manufacturing to your last mile delivery, whatever happens. So how do you stay informed? It's like, we talk about, there is a lot of things which is coming on the entrance exam. So what will happen actually if in the mid of the year you come to know that, the examination syllabus has changed or the marking system has changed? What would you do? Would you stop giving for the exam, or would you be ready for it, or would you have any clue? Most likely, if you are into the game, if your skin is into the game, you will be aware of what is coming, of what is going to hit you, right? So how do you do that? You have to have a regular monitoring system. You need to be connected with the government agencies. You need to be a change evangelist, working with authorities, working with societies, so that you know when the pulse might change. Wouldn't take much of your time, but actually, few years back, I used to be in Dyson, which was a UK-based appliance major. And we used to make purifiers. And when the COVID came, it was said that, okay, only essentials will be on. And we were not into essentials company, but actually we knew we sell purifiers. That is the time you need good, clean air. So we pissed that. We knew that, okay, we'll give it a thought. Let us work with the MHA and say that, as much as you need a chocolate powder or a biscuit, you might need good air, and what better thing that we should be allowed for continuation of the services. It did. We played our card. We won because there was a merit to it. How do you have a diversified logistics network? How do you have a tech integration? So you have a plan B, plan C. We talk about resiliency, but do you have that tech in place so that you can scale up your business? You can zoom in and zoom out. You can move to other pillars if there is any change which is there in your system, which you are seeing it. Very important to also advocate the policy changes. Where do you do it? Do you have the right spokes in the right angle? Do you have the right people with whom you interact? Do you make an impact which society sees you as a change evangelist where your voice can be heard? That is quite important. And then you will have to also invest in R&D. Don't we know that what is going to, we all stay in Delhi. We all know what is the water crisis going to come. is it so difficult for us to believe and fathom that water, just like we talk about decarbonization of logistics, tomorrow it might be something, a regulation might come that you'll have to pay a penalty actually if you are not saving water. So how do you be better aware of it? How can you listen to your customers, not only understand what you are selling as a product, but what in the society, what the ecosystem is changing? And how do you recalibrate yourselves? How do you understand the need? How do you fathom it better? And how do you realign, recalibrate yourself better is a strong element. Last but not the least, is also about how do you have a risk mitigation in place? How do you have a compliance? Do you have an audit? Do you know where you can stand? The goalpost might change. Would you be like a deer who's caught up in a fog light? Or would you be ready with other things? You will have your assessments done. You know where your wins are, and you may pivot early.
All right, thanks, Abhishek. With that, I'll have to bring this session to a close. But friends, as a country, we are all poised to, become the third largest by, 2030. We are poised to become the second largest next to China in terms of purchase power parity by 2040. And with the Amrit Kal, we are poised to become the developed economy by 2047. Just with the permission of the organizers, last 30 seconds, a quick round. It's really not right to have such senior stalwarts and not allow them to come in second time. So a quick question. Budget is round the corner. Friends, anything at the top of your mind, which is your wish list in terms of ask from the government to make this logistics further efficient, further cost effective?
Yeah, two things. One thing is, while we have direct corridors, we have good highways and all, but last mile delivery is a problem. Still, there is a problem like Bombay and Delhi, there's a traffic, you are not able to deliver last mile. So we have to take some regulations, some direct corridors on the road also to deliver the goods and all. Second is, like we are importing goods, so there is a ban on finished good. Most of the countries, you can't bring the finished good and all. There's a Make in India drive, that's a very good. But still, some of the parts are not available. You are not manufacturing in India. For those things, if your duty is so high, 20% or something like that, so again, you are forced to manufacture costlier products. So these are two things coming into my mind and all.
So considering the budget part, so if we see, we are doing a lot of import of the medical equipments and the imported drugs for our patients also. And the current duty on these medical items around 28 to 37%. So in a hospital, we usually do the VD analysis, vital, essential, and desirable. So my request is policymakers, so they can also do this on equipment, vital, essential, and desirables. So those equipment which are vital for the Indian peoples, we don't have any Make in India quality equipment for the same. So they can give us some competitive custom duty relaxation to the hospitals and a patient so that they can afford, or the Indian hospitals can afford, and we can get that technology in India.
Yeah, so maybe not so much on the budget, but Vishal, there is something certainly on the policy side and some interventions that I think the government of India should certainly be looking at. Now, most of our intervention, we're talking about Make in India, Atmanirbhar, and we're also talking about promoting the exports out of India. But there's a constraint when it comes to handling exports, and the constraints are not internal. The constraint is that all the carriers, whether it is the airlines or the shipping lines, these are all foreign carriers. And you have no regulatory control over them when it comes to pricing. I'm sure there are a lot of exporters and importers in the audience over here, and they will tell you at this point of time how much choked your infrastructure is, the aircrafts, airports are. And to top that up, the pricing of air freight has gone through the roof. Similarly, with external factors like the anti-dumping regime that the US is following for Chinese goods, there is again a rush for containers which are being placed on that corridor, China-US corridor, creating a skew, shortage of containers, skipping of vessels. I think that entire game is outside our scope right now. We need an intervention. I don't know how strong that would be. How can we control pricing of these foreign carriers? They are not our flagships. Maybe one of the things that we can look at is have our own flagship carriers, both for air freight and for sea freight. Otherwise, we're going to be totally dependent on factors like what is happening between China and the US. And our exports, they have taken a hit. I think maybe I can also mention over here the geopolitics that has been played out for the last 1.5 years, the Red Sea crisis. Transit times have increased by 20 days, creating again a choke on the air freight side. People are not able to put that, someone from India to take that lead, because you can't put 20 days worth of inventory in transit in sea. So that inventory is moving to air, pushing the air freight prices up again. So that is one policy intervention. Some framework needs to come around that. That's my expectation.
Quick one from this side.
Yeah, from my side, it's about how do you democratize data, which is available across. How do we talk about sensors, blockchain, tools? How do government promotes these startups, these new companies which can really automate this? That's the second point. And the last thing is we still have only 20% of the women workforce in logistics. How can we better into it? And how do we skill develop? Thank you.
So two quick ones from my side under NLP itself. While considerable work has happened, but I think there's a step up required on the first part on the asset standardization and service standardization. I think that's one piece that I look forward to. And second thing, obviously, which he has also talked about in human resource development and capacity development in logistics. I think these are two crucial things which are going to hit us very badly if we don't step it up fast.
Dr. Venkat, last word.
I have two wishes from the government on the budget around the corner. One is healthcare budget should be increased at least to 5%. US is 7%, 17% of the GDP. UK is 11% of the GDP. Even China is 7% of the GDP. We are running through 2.5%. I expect the government to increase the budget to 5%. That's one. Number two, I expect the government to give some concession on tax benefit for the product which is healthcare related for transportation and logistics, whatever we are using on warehouses, they should give some concession. These two expectations from the government. Thank you.
Perfect. So no one restricted their wish list to single point. Everyone had more than one. But with that, let's bring it to a close. May I request all of you to please give a round of applause to the panelists here. Thank you.
What a phenomenal panel that turned out to be, and what an interesting wish list out there. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, as I thank our panelists, I'd like to also please invite on stage Abhishek Chaturvedi, Vice President, Godrej Kober, to please come forward, sir. And if I could please request you to present a token of gratitude to all of our panelists, all of our speakers. And on that note, sir, I'm going to request you to please join our panelists for a group photograph as well. We'll request all of you to kindly step forward so we can have, yes.